Hey guys, welcome back. Today is part 2 of our tree tour. So our last video we took you guys in the front and I showed you all of our beautiful trees that we had back or in the front, and now we're going to the back where we're in the back, and I can't wait to show you guys this space because we completely leveled this garden. Probably, was it 3 years ago? I always forget.
Yeah, maybe
2021,
3, 4.
Right? 2021. Yeah, I think it was 2021. We have the video up that I'll link below if you guys are interested to see it. But we completely graded this backyard. So there was nothing here. It was just a blank slate. We removed 2 big trees that were here before, and it was just like a blank slate. And that gave us like a lot of opportunity to plant a lot of beautiful specimens in our garden. And the thought process that I had when we were planting the trees, which was kind of the first things that we got into the ground, was we wanted to plant a screen of deciduous and evergreen around our property. The center remained where I have the big cut flower garden just because I love growing flowers so much. So I really had to be creative in layering my trees properly so it creates interest. Obviously, in a future garden, I want to have more islands of trees like in the center of a garden and not necessarily only on the perimeter. But I think what we did is really special. And I think there's still a lot of, not a lot, but there's a little bit of room for some evergreens that I can still tuck in, maybe some narrow versions. And in the side garden, we're not really going to go into it too much because we've talked about this place. It's a holding cell of everything. Contractors, we're doing some work here, and it's just, yeah, it's a little bit of a mess, but it's the reality of what's going on right now. And we actually filmed a video with Kate from Hello Garden here, and she helped me design this space, and I'm so looking forward to putting all of those things into life. I bring everything into life. So anyways, we're in the back. We're going to start over here and then make our way around the whole garden. So starting over here, when you're walking into our garden, we have this hoop here that goes into the garden, but over here is where we kind of start the trees. And if you actually take a little step back, you can see how it's just filled with trees, and it kind of looks like a little bit of a forest back here. And when you're coming into our backyard, it's nice because you see nothing right now. You will in the future. But when you walk in, you're welcomed by all of these trees back here, and it's just got so much interest, and it immediately draws your eyes to the back. Starting over here is this blue Japanese pine that we have, and it's a slow grower. I think this was one of the trees in the very beginning that when we saw, we knew we had to have it in our garden. We wanted to plant it right here just because it adds a little bit more dimension next to our shed. But the pine cones are really what are interesting about this tree. And I just love how open and kind of sparse it is. It just looks very it looks like a person almost. What are those things called? At like a car place where it's like that balloon thing going back and forth. That's what it reminds me of anyway. So I love this tree so much. Right in front of it is this Fuyu persimmon. And we are a big persimmon family. We love them so much. They are ready for us in the late winter time. This tree, when we planted it, it was pretty small. It's gotten very heavy, and we actually do need to come in here and probably stake some of these branches up. But one of the things that I also like to implement in the back, not so much in the front, is adding edibles with ornamental things. So we have fruit trees kind of mixed in with our evergreens and our other deciduous trees. And when you don't have space to do I don't know, just like a bunch of fruit trees, add them into your landscape. I like to select things that are going to be beautiful, not just I probably wouldn't put an apple tree back here, although I love apples and would love to have an orchard one day of just a bunch of different types of fruits. It's not the prettiest tree in my opinion. So pick something, one that you like, but if you can find something that has beautiful leaves or just a beautiful structure, then I highly recommend it. we have a lot of figs, and we'll talk about that in a second. So to my right, we have one of many fig trees that we have. In fact, we at one point had 45 fig trees, and we had that many because Sergey loves them so much, and it was probably one of the first things we really got interested in growing. This is our first garden, so we really just did a lot of experimenting, which has been really fun. But we propagated so many of our figs. So it's funny because all of our neighbors have one of our fig trees, and maybe there's like one neighbor who doesn't, but for the most part, I think everybody around this area has a fig tree of ours, or their family members have a fig tree. So we love figs, and we will continue growing figs, especially in the future. I definitely want to have a space just dedicated to figs. But anyways, this is a striped, oh my gosh, striped tiger. It's a panache tiger fig, and the fruits are delicious. However, it's been doing something kind of funky. I don't know if it's just not getting enough afternoon sun, but it's put on quite a bit of growth since we pruned it last year. But I don't know, the figs are just not ripening like they've done in the past. They're kind of small, and they're just taking their time. So not too sure what's going on, but the tree itself looks very, very happy and is growing beautifully. Back here is a witch hazel, which is typically not a tree, or I think a lot of people consider a tree, but we do want to grow it as a tree. We want to make sure that we'll probably start this year, start pruning it back to kind of create a standard form. This is it's one of the most beautiful things in the winter time because it puts on these like crinkly little flowers. And this is a yellow one. We lost the one, right? Is this the yellow? Yeah, yellow. This is the yellow. And I'll get the exact name for you guys. And then we used to have one over there in the corner that was orange, and it was so pretty, but it died for whatever reason. So anyways, but this has so much winter interest. And if you can find a space where you can let it just grow, it can get really, really massive. And then you can kind of prune it however you want. You can keep it kind of in a shrub, or you can prune it to be more of a standard form. So it gives you a little bit of versatility, which is great. Right back here is our Bruns, our blue spruce, and probably one of my favorite trees on our whole property. It's probably one of the first trees that we planted back here after we leveled everything. Back here, there used to be this huge maple, and it was kind of a cool looking tree. However, it had a branch hanging over our neighbor's house, and there was like water dripping into a hole that was rotten in the center. And we knew at like any point in time that branch could fall. And the idea of something on my property like that could potentially damage somebody's home or them was just like, it was non-negotiable. Like that was the first thing we did, is we removed that tree because it was just an accident waiting to happen. And so typically we wouldn't plant right above a stump, or at least that's what our tree remover said. They said you shouldn't plant right above it, but we did grind the stump down and we planted it. We mounted it really high up, brought in a lot of compost, and we planted it, and it's doing great. So it's nice because it also adds a little bit of interest, kind of like with that berm that we talked about in the first video. So anytime where we can get a little bit of height anywhere to add interest into the garden, that's what we like to do. So here is another emperor maple. And this was actually one of the very first trees we planted back here. And it was tiny. I mean, it was really small. I'm surprised at how much size it put on just in the last 3 years. And we wanted to plant a small one because we wanted that low branching, because if you step back, it just adds kind of like a level of layer. So it's kind of like, almost like a lasagna. It's like layer, layer, layer. And we like that, like, it's almost like a stepping effect, if that makes sense. And one of my favorite views of the garden is actually when I'm working back there doing just finicking with things behind the shed. I love pausing and then peeking over the tree and then just looking out into the cut flower garden. Okay, let me scooch my way back here. It's kind of like a maze. Right in front of you guys is another Hollywood juniper. And I love this one. It did take a little bit of time to grow, to kind of get big, but it's starting to put on a lot of size this year. And I want this one to get just kind of wild and funky and create a little bit of a screen back here. I especially like it because it's back planted behind the maple. So in the wintertime, when all of the leaves of the maple have fallen, we have this beautiful evergreen that draws your eyes all the way back here. And one of the things that I recommend you do when you're planning out your space, try to plant things in corners or far out in your garden, because that is going to draw your eyes back there. And what that does, it makes your space look a lot bigger. So instead of having trees right in the center, which you can totally do by doing something like this where everything, all of the deciduous trees, all of their leaves fall off, my eyes are still being drawn all the way back here from our deck or the cut flower garden, wherever I am in my garden. So it just makes that space look a lot bigger. Here is a dry riverbed, and I still want to tool up this place. We need to come in and do a little bit of work back here, which we will do soon. Now back here is where we have another Newton's Oriental spruce, like the same one that we have in the front. And this one isn't quite as tall as the other one. Next to it is this Gold Rider Leland cypress, and this was a new addition this spring, and I love it so much. So the reason why we planted this here is just to, again, give us a little bit more screen, a little bit more privacy. And I like it because we were missing yellow element back here, and so this added that yellow element. And the cool thing about this tree is it's a two-tone tree. So it's green on the center and then yellow at the tips. So you're kind of getting two colors in one, which is really nice. And you guys know how, like, in probably wintertime or springtime, Costco gets those really pretty, like, Leland cypress. If you can find these instead, I think these would be much more interesting than using those as a screen. If you're looking for something to use as a screen and you want to just plant a row of it, then I think this would be really, really stunning. Now over here is probably my favorite tree. It's like top 3. Probably not my favorite. It was my favorite like 2 years ago. My favorites change. But anyways, this is a Bracken Brown magnolia, and it's such a beautiful tree. And I think when you think about magnolia trees, I think it's just quintessential, like, southern tree. But I wanted to bring some of the south up here to the north, and that's what I did with this tree. And when we bought it, she was also very, very small, and it was the first tree that we planted. And then I remember we were grading the backyard, but we had already planted this back here, and then they broke a branch, and I was so upset at our contractors. But I mean, obviously it was an accident, and it grew beautifully. But the great thing about this compared to like a southern magnolia is that this one doesn't lose as many leaves as the southern magnolia or the little gem. And it still has that beautiful, fragrant, like overpowering scent that all of the magnolias have. And it's just so, so beautiful. When I'm out here in the garden in the springtime, I walk by and I just get that whiff, and it just stops me in my track every time. And the other great thing about this tree, if you want to come closer, is that it is a deep, deep green. And I believe out of all of the magnolias, it has that beautiful, dark, fuzzy, velvety brown underside of the leaf. And I don't know, this tree just does something for me. It just creates so much interest. And it's funny because my neighbor has one, but I believe theirs is a southern magnolia. And in the wintertime, I like to make arrangements with these, but I'm always like, I don't want to cut from my tree. But she always wants hers pruned, so I get to go over there in the wintertime and prune on her tree instead of mine, which is a win-win for her and for me. Over here, we have another Gold Rider cypress. And then right over here is this beautiful, chunky, short little Ruby Falls redbud. And I love this tree so much. She's so cute. And I just get so excited about this one. It's the first tree to bloom in the springtime. It puts on these purple, like these bright, like in-your-face purple flowers. And when nothing else is doing anything, all of a sudden your eyes get drawn back here and you just see these branches covered in these little purple flowers. And it's almost like the the branches are flowers because they're so dense and beautiful. And they also have, just if you get close to the leaves, the other feature that I love about this tree is the shape of the leaves. Just the heart. With a lot of red buds, this is what you're going to see. And I just love that color variation with the purple and green. It's very interesting, and it creates beautiful spring interest, but beautiful fall interest as well. Sergey's like, are you missing a tree? And I said, no. He's like, yes, you are, right behind you. So funny story, this is an olive tree, and I wanted an olive tree in the cut flower garden because it's very French country, and I sometimes like to pretend I live in the French countryside or the English countryside. And so it just kind of brings that little element of that. And we actually rescued this tree. One of the vineyards, there's a local vineyard here, and they bought this tree and they kept it downstairs in their wine cellar with no light. And then they returned it to the nursery that we bought it from and said, well, it's not doing well. And when I heard this story, I was like, right, because it's not getting light. So I just thought it was so funny. And yeah, she wasn't doing too good, and she's rebounded a lot. She did take a little bit of a hit this winter when it froze, but it's doing okay now. And it does grow little olives. They're not edible, but a ton of little olives on this olive tree. And I don't know the exact variety though, but it's such a beautiful tree. Right here is an Arizona blue cypress. And it's funny because I feel like at one point, Sergey didn't want this tree. Didn't you say that? You wanted to take it out? You did. Don't lie.
It always looked dry.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So that was his thing. Like, it just looks dry. It looks dead. But I was like, absolutely not. We were not taking out this tree. It's so pretty. It has like a creamy green look to it and the sweetest scent. It's so magical. Now the thing with this tree though, it can get a little fluffy if you allow it. It's kind of fluffy right now because we didn't have it pruned this year. But in the winter time, we do prune it pretty heavily and then we shape it. So we kind of scallop it and shape it up again to kind of create more airflow under here. But this is such a beautiful, I mean, any of these Arizona cypress, there's a few different varieties. I'll make sure to pop up the exact one for you guys. And I believe it can get, I think 20 to 40 feet tall. Maybe, I might be wrong. But anyways, it's a beautiful, beautiful tree. And if you actually, Sergey, if you get close, if you pay attention to the bark, I think that's also very interesting. You see how it almost has a little bit of a red tint to it, like a dark red? I don't know, I just really like it. And again, it provides that scent, which is so nice. It's not overwhelming, it's just very subtle and very, very yummy. Is our coral bark maple, and she's beautiful. We just planted these echinacea under here the other day, and it's a stunning tree. Now, the thing with this coral bark, it gets full sun, morning and afternoon sun. When we bought this tree, we actually bought it from a local grower, directly from a local grower. We were driving in the middle of the country and we saw this wholesaler, and I was like, I wonder if I can go in. And so I politely drove up the driveway, and there's like a bunch of people outside working on propagating trees, and I was like, can I buy a tree from you directly? And they're like, oh, we're wholesale. And I'm like, I know, but you have so many beautiful specimens, and I got to pick out my own. And so he sold it to me at a wholesale price, which was just so generous of him. And he mentioned that the coral bark, he notices when it gets full sun, they tend to be redder in the winter time, which was kind of opposite what I thought, but it does really glow back here. Like in the winter time, it has these beautiful red, coral red branches, and it just creates so much beautiful winter interest. So definitely recommend this maple if you're on the market for one. We have another Gold Rider Leland cypress. We also have this mulberry that we have not planted. This is Mulberry Tea's weeping tree. Let me just tell you guys the specs. It grows 12 by 16, needs full sun. It's just a beautiful tree. Again, mixing in edible with ornamental stuff. And we want to plant it here. This is where our witch hazel was that died. So I'm thinking we're going to actually bring it out a little bit further And then that way we can maybe tuck something back there. I don't know, we'll see. Back here is a Deodora cedar, and I will get you the exact name because we have two and I, for the life of me, cannot remember their exact name. And I think I have the tag somewhere. But the cool thing about this one, which is a little bit scary, the first time I ever did, I was like, I can't believe it's dying. I was so upset. It loses all of its needles. It just loses the needles. And then you think like it died. And then all of a sudden it just flushes these beautiful minty green needles and it just fills in and looks stunning like this. The other cool thing about Deodoras is that you can find ones that stay a little bit more open and a little bit more sparse. So if you don't have a lot of space, you can find ones that you can kind of sneak in. There's some that just grow like tall and upright. And I just think they create interest in the landscape because it mixes in kind of that openness with some of your other fuller trees to just add more dimension and a different texture in your landscape. Now over here is
what do you call this beauty over here?
This is a new specimen that I, how do I want to say this? That I discovered, and it's not for sale yet. I'm just kidding, it's dead. You guys know, we talked about this before. This is our beech tree that sadly died, and I just removed all of its branches because I was mulching back here and I didn't want all of the leaves to fall and I would have to pick that up. So we did secure the other one. I still have to go pick that up. I'm gonna pick that up tomorrow. So we will plant that back here again because I just couldn't. I'm gonna try one more time, see if it'll survive. And if not, then it's definitely something going on over here that it does not like. A blue Electra cedar. This one doesn't get very big, I believe. It's very open and I like it, but I don't love it. I think I would love it more if I planted it closer in and it allowed me to plant something a little bit more denser in the back. Because again, I wanted to create that screen, and this is not a tree. Any of these cedars are not ones that I would consider ones to create like an actual green screen, just because they're so open. If they're back planted by something that's a little bit fuller and a little bit more dense, then yes. But this one I think is a beautiful specimen. But back here is an Avondale redbud, and I went through a phase I think last year with redbuds that all I wanted was to like learn about redbuds and buy redbuds. So I'm kind of like at the tail end of that, and I'm kind of into crab apples right now, but that'll be a different topic to discuss at another time. This is a really pretty tree. However, I don't like it where it's planted. It will get big and it will get fuller up top. It'll create a beautiful crown, but again, it's a deciduous tree, and I would like to bring it actually up here. This is where we had a fig that did not make it. It wasn't doing too good to start with, and it did not make it. So I'm thinking that we will bring the redbud over here, and then that will leave us the back area to plant something. We'll keep it pretty small. Again, it has really pretty pink flowers, like purpley pink in the springtime. So if you're looking for more spring interest, look into redbuds because there's so many different varieties and all of them look beautiful in the springtime. Right here is a lollipop crabapple. And I think I talked about this before in another video. I'll see if I can throw up a clip for you guys, but it has the most beautiful little delicate white flowers in the springtime. And this is the tree that feeds a lot of my mason bees. I know when I don't have a lot of things going on in the garden, she comes through and she saves the bees because it just gets like the branches are just clusters of all of these little white flowers, and the mason bees go wild for it. So definitely would love to add another crabapple somewhere, just again keeping in mind that we love mason bees, but we don't have a lot of early spring things for them. So this kind of like keeps us kind of carries us over. And then also our neighbors' trees, they all have fruit trees, and so that also helps the mason bees. But anyways, really beautiful tree. Right over here is a little gem magnolia, which is kind of like the little sister to the southern magnolia. This one tends to stay a lot more narrow. So if you have a space where you want to, you know, put a magnolia in your garden, which I totally recommend because they're beautiful trees, then I would definitely consider the little gem. You know, it's funny because every time I think of a magnolia tree, I immediately think about Joanna Gaines. I don't know if you guys are the same, but I mean, obviously magnolia, but anyway. Over here is a Burgundy Jewel maple. This is the second one that we have. It's the same tree that we transplanted from the front to the side of the deck. You can see that it's also not doing very good. I think it's just getting way too much sun. And so she will probably be transplanted next year to the side garden somewhere. And then we'll have an opportunity to plant something else over here. It's just really sad because it starts out really pretty in the springtime, but once we hit about midsummer, the sun just starts getting really, really hard, and then this starts to happen. So too bad, because it's a beautiful tree, but that means we need to find purple or red over here. Right back here is a golden deodora cedar. Again, very open, very sparse, very northwest. The pines have a really beautiful golden color to them. It's probably hard to see on camera, but it's kind of like a bright golden yellow. And I like it because if you stand back, there's a lot of green going on back here, but this one really draws your attention to this corner of the garden, which I really love a lot. And right over here, we have a Corky's Delight fig, which is probably my favorite green fig. I don't know if it's yours. Do you like this one?
No.
No, he doesn't like this one, but I like this one. And he didn't want this tree here either. And I was like, absolutely not, we're keeping this tree. Because he didn't like the shape of it. And we will shape it because it's doing something kind of funky. This branch should be doing this, but it's doing this. So we're gonna have to come in and prune this up good this winter time. But just another fig tree to admire. Right.
That was your first fig you purchased.
Oh, was it? Mm-hmm. That I purchased?
You purchased.
Oh, so you have trees and I have trees. Is that what we're doing? Like, okay, so you guys heard that, right? So this is my tree. So you cannot prune it. I have to prune it. Deal?
And that's what happens when you don't prune it.
But you instructed me to prune this tree, remember?
There's no footage of that.
No, yes you did. I know you did. I will, oh my gosh. Nice try, but back here we have 3 weeping Alaskan cedars. So it mimics the one in the front. That's one thing that I also like to do is tie in the front and the back. That way we have some repeating trees. So it just looks a little bit more cohesive. Now, once those fill in, I think that's going to create green screen back there and the perfect backdrop to our second Shishigashira Lion's Head maple, which this poor tree, it's been through it, you guys. We planted it further back. Like, that was originally when we planted it, it was a little bit further back. And then I was like, well, I want to plant more cedars in the back because I think that's very interesting. So we brought it a little bit forward. And then last year we noticed that it was a little bit too low. So what did we do? We moved it again. So we lifted it up, we created a little bit of a berm, and now it's doing fine. I for sure thought it was gonna be like, I'm not doing this anymore. You guys have abused me for 2 years. I'm not doing it, but it survived and it's thriving, and I love this one so much. Right here is a paper bark maple, and I'll stand back so you guys can see it. It's such a beautiful maple. So this tree has more of an oval rounded crown. It has an open habit and upright branching. It has really pretty soft green leaves that turn scarlet in the fall time, just like that bright scarlet color. So the main reason why we chose this maple for this area is, one, it's slow growing. It's not going to get too big, but it's a very slow grower. And the other thing was, it's the bark. It's that papery kind of peeling bark. Do you see? It's just really stunning. One of the things we always talk about in videos is paying attention to the trunk of the tree. And I couldn't think of a more fascinating tree to add that has so much bark and trunk interest than something like this. There's obviously other beautiful, other trees out there with beautiful trunks, but for maple and for the space that we have, this is such a stunner. Again, slow growing, really interesting leaf shapes. It's not like regular maples, which is nice. And once it starts taking off, we can really start shaping it up, kind of create more of a oval, rounder shape. Before we go to the corner over there, I did want to talk about this area here, because there's a lot of trees that are not planted. These are trees that I bought that I love that eventually will be planted. We talked about the Styrax quite a bit, and it's probably not going to go over here, but we do have 2 of them. I also have a vine maple, which is really beautiful and has almost these bear claw leaf structures. I love this. We have a couple of cypresses, and those are going to be planted in the side garden. And the funny thing is, it looks drastically different than the one you're about to see back there. And that's because I pruned it. I wanted to just experiment and see what would happen if I just pruned it almost like a bonsai. And I actually think I did a really good job, and I think it looks really pretty. So I'm going to either put both of them in the side garden, or one of them might go in the front behind that maple that I showed you guys by my office window. So one of these might go over there. And yeah, I don't know. I just love that I was able to play with it and see what happens. Over here, let me just show you, get the name of this maple. This is the Golden Full Moon Maple. Very beautiful. I believe this one is going to go in the container next to the house. Yes, I think that was the plan for this one. That was my idea with this maple. I like this one because it's a very chartreusey green. You can see it starts turning color in the fall time, but it doesn't just the whole leaf turn color. It starts out at the edges right over here, if you guys can see that little bit of a color change. So it just creates a lot of dimension, and just, I don't know, a really pretty maple. Yeah, there's definitely a couple of trees that I'm going to keep in a container. Not these containers, not their nursery containers, but other containers that I have, because I 100% intend on taking a couple of trees with me when we move, because some of them are so pretty. The shapes are just so stunning that I can't bring myself to let them go. And then the other maple I wanted to show you was right back here. And this one, I always mispronounce the name, but it's a Kaihashiho Japanese maple. 1,000,000% mispronounced that, but I will put the specs up for you on the screen. And really pretty leaf structures. Again, to me, this is like a true maple leaf. Oh, sorry, little guy. And it's just a deeper green than the other one. It's a true green, not a very chartreusey green. And again, it still gives you that really pretty fall interest. Okay, finally, we are at the Vanderwolf, which is my favorite evergreen at the moment. That could change next year, but at the moment, she is my favorite. It is just got a beautiful columnar shape to it. Kind of big, and this one grew really quickly. They are on the spendier side, I will say. Like the Vanderwolfs, everywhere I find them, they're pretty spendy, but they're worth it. They're an investment. I think they are a specimen piece. I think they don't need a lot around them, because this itself is such a showstopper. The needles, if you come in, is interesting because it's almost two-tone. It's green and white. So here, let's look. Do you see how it's like green on one side and then it's white on the back. So I think that's what really makes this interesting and like immediately draws your eyes to it and gives it more dimension than another pine. Soft needles, so again, not going to bother you if you brush up against it. It's not going to make your skin itch like some of the other ones. But yeah, it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous tree. I think I want to add one more.
To where the beech.
Yeah. Well, no.
Yes.
We have the
tree goes
so here, okay, you guys vote. And he thinks where the beech tree is, we should put another Vanderwolf. And then he believes we should put the beech over here and then move this fig, which this Desert King fig. And we want to move it regardless.
The area needs something tall.
Yeah, it does need something tall, but it also, I think it's not doing well because it doesn't get full sun. It gets a lot of morning sun, but not full sun. And I think that's why it's struggling to ripen the figs. So we might have to move this regardless of what we put over here. It's just not doing as well as we thought it would. Right behind here is a false cypress. And originally we were gonna mirror this cypress right over here next to the deck, but we did the maple instead. But what I like about these cypresses is they just have a very different structure than any other tree. If you come close, it's just very crinkly. You see, it's different. They almost look like little fans. Like, look at this. Let me just pull this off. See, it just looks like one of those little fans, the way they fan out. It almost reminds me of like a ginkgo tree, but in a evergreen form. I don't know, but smells really good. These don't get tall and they don't take up too much space. You can find them like everywhere. And you know what? I actually got this at Home Depot. Believe it or not, like, right? Home Depot or Lowe's? It was Home Depot.
They both have them.
Yeah, and they were like super, super inexpensive. I think they were like $65, I think, maybe. Yeah, very like inexpensive, but it just adds a lot of interest back here. And the reason why I wanted something a little bit smaller is because we have our sweet pea trellises in the back, and I had to have something that I can walk through because everything is so dense in our yard, which I love, but I need to remember to leave paths for myself. So we have two more of those that we plan on planting in the side garden. Right here is another little gem. This one struggles. She's not
enough light.
Yeah, not enough light. And also the storm. Remember? Like it was just like, it was like falling over with ice on it. So I'm gonna give it one more year and see if she rebounds. I'm gonna fertilize a lot. Not a lot, but I'm gonna fertilize her good and see what she does. But she's not doing too good. Back here is another blue spruce. It mirrors the one over there by the shed. This one, however, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see, but this has pine cones on it. And I think the pine cones are so stunning. In fact, I get really, really excited about pine cones. I don't know why, but I get really, really excited about them. Maybe because I use them a lot in decorations and I don't know. Oh, you know what? It's also because I used to pick pine cones too when I was little. Like right when we moved to America, I'm from Brazil. I remember going into the playground. We had I remember my elementary school had a beautiful forest in the back. And I remember sneaking back there, again, tree love. And I remember sneaking back there during recess and like just picking up a bunch of pine cones. I don't know what I would do with them, but I love pine cones. And once again, this is just a Desert King fig. Really tasty fig. I like this one because it probably has the best shape out of all of them in my opinion. It grows really full. It's not getting enough sun, so it might need to be moved. But if you're looking for a hardy fig, especially if you're in the Northwest, these do very well up here for us. So keep that in mind if you are on the market for a fig, or just wait another year and we'll have a bunch of propagations that you can have. So, and finally back to this corner, which we planted together, is our other Burgundy Jewel maple. It kind of got shocked because obviously we moved it on a hot day and it's kind of that tail end of the summertime. So it's still in the 90s for us right now this week, but it's going to be doing okay. This is what it should look like. Do you see? This is new growth. This is what we're looking for. All right, guys, well, that will wrap up part 2 of our tree tour. I am exhausted because I have been hauling soil all day. I cannot wait to go in and just take a bath and relax. I hope you guys have a relaxed weekend yourselves. Let me know if you have any question about any of our trees. I definitely think we have opportunity for some other things behind things. I'm looking for taller evergreen structures to tuck in behind already existing trees. So I'm excited to do that. I actually saw some really pretty things at Isley Nursery when we were there with Kate and Janie. So I kept a little mental note of what they were. But yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today in my garden. I hope you found some inspiration, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.